My name is Paul Schulten. I'm an air show pilot. I've been earning my living in aviation for 35 years now, and I've been doing air shows for 5 years. I've got a couple of videos for y'all. I'll tell you all about flying air shows, getting in the business, what it's like, and then if we have a little time at the end, we'll do a Q&A. So without further ado, if you could cue up our little intro video there, sir. Thank you. Thank you. What did that look like fun, huh? I'm getting excited just watching it. Golly, that was Orville Eagle at the end. He's my mascot. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Been earning a living flying for 35 years. I've been at Southwest Airlines for 28 years. Last I checked, I've got a little over 24,000 hours of flying time. I don't really keep that good a track of it. When I got hired at Southwest, I kind of figured, hopefully nobody will ever ask me how much flight time I have again. Anyhow, that equals, I think, 2.7 years of time, not on this earth, up in the air. And so, you know, the old saw goes, all the time you spend in the sky doesn't count towards your allotted time here on the planet. So I got that going for me. I've got about 900 hours in my Eagle, and as I tell people, it's 20 minutes at a time. And so that's a lot of flight time in the Eagle. Obviously, I ferried at places and whatnot, but most of the time in my little Christen Eagle, I would go out for what I call therapy sessions or practice, and it'd be about 20 minutes and 5 gallons of gas and, you know, +6 and -4 Gs and come back and everything's good with the world again. All my training was civilian, came up through the ranks, got my private with a friend, and then was kind of monkeying around halfway through my instrument. Ended up going to a state college in Texas, Central Texas College, and I kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone there. They had a flying program, so you could get your ratings and college credit at the same time. Yeah, so that was great. I got out and followed the standard path there, you know. I was an instructor. I did, traffic patrol. I hauled checks at night in Barons and Navajos and whatever airplane they pulled out on the ramp that night. Did a little bit of commuter. I got 423.5 hours in a jet stream. If anybody knows what that is, you'll appreciate that. Cubs, Luscombe's, Eagles. My first type rating was in the DC-3, so that was cool. I got my ATP in the type rating in the DC-3, and I think I was 24, 25 years old, and I thought I was king of the world at the time. To this day, it's nice having a DC-3 type rating, I suppose. Tried to fill up, I guess, the proverbial experience bucket before the luck bucket ran out, and it all worked out for me. I have no regrets. Aviation's been really, really good to me. I met my beautiful wife at Southwest Airlines. Southwest has been unbelievable. Better than I could ever possibly imagine. Looking back, I don't know what I would change if I could. I'd probably just mess it up. I figured God has a plan for everybody. I did a whole lot of hard work, a little bit of praying, and I smiled a lot. And here I am, I've been slipping through the cracks ever since. Hope they don't call my third grade teacher and check my math scores or something. Anyhows, a little aside here, my speech has the loving life in it. The LUV comes from, it's Southwest Airlines. We're the LUV airline. I don't know if everybody knows that. Our stock symbol on the New York Stock Exchange is LUV. And we're based at Love Field in Dallas. So that's kind of where all that came from. As far as simulation, when I was coming up through the ranks back in the early 80s, there was nothing like this. I would have loved it if there was. The best story I have about simulation, it really was a big help for me. I had a neighbor, this is back in the day, if you went to go get your instrument rating, the FAA would allow you to have, I think they still do, 20 hours of your flight time towards your instrument rating in a simulator. And at the time, there was nothing like this. But my neighbor had been getting his instrument rating with a school that went out of business. And part of the deal was they had this simulator called an ATC 610. And if you Google it, it'll show you a picture of it. It's this big desktop thing about this big. It basically looks like the panel of a 172. And you take this giant thing and you plug it in the wall, and it has actual gyros in it, and it starts making noise and spinning and whirring. And it came with a folder of cassette tapes and a little plotter that would actually plot your course on a piece of paper and show if you entered the hold right and that sort of thing. So anyway, he loaned this thing to me, and I took it home, and I was just learning to fly by instruments or working on my instrument rating. As an aside, how many people here are licensed pilots? Okay, and how many want to be a licensed pilot? Okay, great. So I'll try not to get too techno here, but anyways, you got to get an instrument rating, which allows you to fly by instruments, no outside visual references in the clouds. So I had kind of prided myself on that point as being a stick and rudder man. That's what I really wanted to do. Maybe that's one of the reasons I got into airshow stuff. But when you come to instrument flying, you kind of have to ignore the seat of the pants feel and pay attention to the instruments, and you'll get conflicting information, and your senses will fool you. So that was a real hurdle for me. And that ATC 610 was a huge help. I flew the wings off that thing. I used to come home every night and turn it on, and I would do the vertical S1 and vertical S2, which is an instrument exercise that was very demanding, made your scan work hard and that sort of thing. I'd come home after going out drinking beer with my buddies and try and do it. I flew the wings off that ATC 610. I finally gave it back to my neighbor. But that was a huge help for me. And to this day, I really think that ATC 610 really helped me. It was set up to where you really had to have, it was old six-pack, of course, steam gauges, and you really had to have good scan patterns. Everything, the gyros processed really bad, or they didn't hold their heading really good and all that, so it really kept you on your game. And that was a huge help. Nowadays, the simulators are fantastic. I've also been a check airman for Southwest Airlines, so I've been able to instruct in our simulators, which is just top of the line, fantastic. Oh my gosh, I wish I could take you all for a ride in one of our simulators at Southwest. They're a fabulous training tool if you have a good instructor. You get a guy or a gal in there that is having a particular problem with something, you can get on the panel, set it up, and put the airplane in whatever flight mode, regime, weather, whatever, and just shoot them through it a few times, and it's just amazing. You can just see the light bulb come on with people. Really get through things really quick. It's an amazing tool. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. I like to call it a procedures trainer rather than a simulator, but that's just the pilot in me. It's not, like I say, it's not the end-all, be-all, but it's certainly a great tool. So how did I get into air shows? Wow. Well, ever since I was a kid, my dad was a Delta pilot, and I've been going to air shows. And I've always been amazed at air show pilots, and I always thought it was great entertainment. And I always just thought, those guys, other than flying combat, that's got to be like the ultimate flying. Getting out here and just putting it out in front of everybody in the clear blue sky. There's nowhere to hide. You can't make any excuses. This is ground level stuff. This is serious stuff, So had to put that aside as I progressed through my career, and I didn't have any money. Nobody will rent you an aerobatic plane if you don't have any money, especially not a good one. So the best things I could get my hands on were like a Citabria and that kind of thing. And I was pretty much turning everything I could get my hands on upside down. Don't tell anybody. Anyhows, Years went by, I got hired with Southwest Airlines, and around 2006, I took the family to Sun and Fun, and the aerobatics were on. I went down in my easy chair, and I was watching these guys out there, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I've got to get back into this. I've got a little money now. I have a very understanding wife, thank you. And anyway, long story short, I ended up buying an Eagle. And the way it works out usually is I'm just going to do a few loops and rolls in this thing, get it out of my system, right? Here I am 12 years later, you know, I bought this Eagle, I've got 900 hours in it. So the way it progressed was, and I don't know, y'all are working your ways up through the ranks. This is just how life works, I think. I tell my kids all the time, and aviation. But I bought this Eagle, and I start going to the little airport, and you meet everybody there. Next thing you know, you're flying with all these guys, and you get into this whole other subculture, and opportunities present themselves and whatnot. So I was flying my Eagle and getting used to it. I was pretty much scared to death of it when I first got it, but I made myself go out and fly it, and I'd go up way high and practice this and that. I did my checkout in it. I bought it in Oregon, actually. Did a checkout with Steve Wolf, the famous Steve Wolf, and then I flew it home. It's not something you want to do, flying an Eagle from Oregon to Florida, because like I say, I did it. Anyways, one thing led to another, and I started going to competitions. I don't know if you know anything about aerobatic competitions, but it's a great venue. You know, you hang out with these guys, and everyone starts talking and about their tales of daring do, and you go, well, you know, there's a competition here in a couple months. There's 6 of them, I think, a year here in Florida. I'll see you there, and nobody ever shows up. So it's kind of one of those crossroads in life. You've got to have some pretty thick skin to go to a competition. You're going to get out there in front of God and everyone, and there's no hiding your mistakes, and they're going to critique you. They don't hand out 10s. You better have some pretty thick skin. But you know what? That's how you get better. So don't be afraid to fail. Get out there and do it. So I started doing some competitions. The first one, I had no idea what I was doing. I uglied it up pretty bad, but nobody got hurt. And I thought, well, you know, if I practice on this, I could probably get pretty good at it. So the basic thing with competitions is you have a box on the ground, and it's marked with markers, corner markers, and a big plus in the middle usually. If I remember right, it's 3,300 by 3,300. There's an X and a Y axis, and you fly a known sequence. And then once you move up, you can design your own sequence, fly an unknown. But basically, everything has to be square to the axis, either X or Y, and you've got a number of turns in the sequence. Those are for you to decide whether you turn left or right. Those are your wind correctors. So no 2 days in the aerobatic box are ever the same. The wind's going to change. Everything's going to change. So my first time, I thought I was getting pretty good in my Eagle. My first time in the box, all of a sudden we added this whole new element to it of this structure on the ground. And I'm having to do loops that are square, and the rolls have to stay straight and all this, and pay attention. The wind's blowing you around and whatnot, and it was just what we call an additive condition in the business. And I remember I was completely frustrated. I was completely uncomfortable. I remember very well pulling out, rolling up to my buddy that was coaching me over the radio. Coaching is a generous term there. And I opened the canopy, and I looked at him, and I said, you know anybody who wants to buy an Eagle? I mean, I thought I didn't know how to fly then. But you know what? I've come to learn that feeling, that uncomfortableness, that, you know, you're out of your comfort zone, that's something I need to embrace, at least for me. Because when I feel that way, I know I'm progressing. I know I'm learning something. I know I've gotten out of my comfort zone. Have you ever seen the little meme? A guy's got a smile on his face, and there's a circle around him that says comfort zone. And then if you get out of it and go up over here, there's greatness. You got to challenge yourself. You got to not be afraid to fail. So you know what? I stuck with it, and I went home that night, and I thought a lot about it, went out a week later. Anyway, a few weeks later, the aerobatic box became my friend. All that stuff that just completely frustrated me a few weeks before became my best friend. It gave me this structure, something to hang on to, something to judge myself with and all. And then it became hard the other way around to do aerobatics without an aerobatic box. So my lesson there is, you know, stick with it. When you get that feeling, embrace it. Go with it. So I'm doing some competitions, and I'm doing pretty good, and people started asking me, do you do air shows? And I said, oh, no, gosh, I don't even know what that would be all about. But the seed was planted. I suppose it was there all along. And so I started looking into it. And what you got to do if you want to fly air shows is you have to go through competitions, basically. That's kind of the groundwork. If you want to get into air shows and you hadn't done any competitions, everybody's going to look at you pretty sideways until you come back in a couple of years. So it worked out for me. You have to join ICAST, International Council of Air Shows. I think it's $365 a year, only $1 a day. You could be a member of ICAS, right? Anyhow, I was at an air show in New Smyrna Beach, and what you have to do is you have to get an ACE, which is a cutesy acronym for Aerobatic Competency Evaluator. There's only about 35 or 40 of them here in the whole country, and down here in Florida, I'm kind of lucky. There's a few of them, and one of them is Miss Patty Wagstaff. She's up at St. Augustine. How many people have ever heard of her? Yeah, she's something else. She is a force to be reckoned with. She's a real gem. So I had no idea what the standards were. I didn't know whether she's going to tell me to go pound sand or what, but I worked up my courage. I saw her at the New Smyrna Beach Air Show, and I approached her and I said, "Excuse me, Miss Wagstaff, my name's Paul Schulten, and I've got a Christen Eagle, and I want to fly air shows." She turned and looked at me, had a big smile on her face. She said, "Oh, great." She was super nice. Gave me her card. We talked for about 5 minutes. She was in a big hurry, and made a plan to talk to each other. And so we talked over the phone for a couple of weeks, worked up a sequence. You need about 18 to 20 maneuvers for 10 minutes. That's what your basic aerobatic sequence is. And then I made an appointment to go up and fly with her in the box at St. Augustine. So I remember going up there that day, met Patty. She looked at everything. She said, "All right, everything I need to see is right here in your sequence, except I need 2 180-degree inverted turns, do one right, one left. I need a 3-turn upright spin and a turn and a half inverted spin, then do your sequence." I said, "Yes, ma'am." So I got out there and I climbed up, went in the box, and I remember very well flying into the box and looking down. There's Patty Wagstaff sitting under a palm tree in a folding chair, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? Anyways, I got in the box, and as usual, you know, as soon as you get in there and start working in the box, time just goes really fast. So I did my thing, came in and landed, pulled up the gas pumps, which are right over by her hangar there. And I remember I was so jacked on adrenaline, I had a hard time getting out of the plane. I kind of had to steady myself. And Patty came walking around the corner. She had a big smile on her face, and she said, "You did great. I turned your stuff in before you're even halfway done." You know, wow, okay. So she looked at me for a second, and she said, "You want to be in air shows, huh?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." So she walked off, and I was monkeying with the gas pump and whatnot. And a couple minutes later, she said, "You know, April 26th or something like that." And I said, "Okay." She hung up. She walked over. She said, "All right, you're in the air show in Valkyria. They're not going to pay you anything, but you're in the show. I'll be there. I'll be keeping an eye on you." I said, "Yes, ma'am." So that's how it all started. And Patty's been very good to me. She's probably been my biggest proponent and let me use her name and really kind of got me going and everything there. So that's just how aviation works too. I mean, everybody needs a leg up, and everybody's helping everybody basically. So, air show day. How's it go on air show day? Well, I have to tell you, it's funny. My air show sequence is like 9 minutes and 40 seconds long generally, and somehow the whole day just flies by. So generally, you got there the day before, you put your plane in a hangar, you went to the hotel, they gave you a rent car, and you're a total prima donna when you're piloted an air show. ICAS has determined that promoters and whatnot do not mess with the pilots. There's been problems in the past, guys arguing with the boss or whatever about their paycheck, and then goes out and crashes. So you're a total prima donna. Nobody will say boo to you. It's, "Here's your car, here's lunch, anything we can do for you, sir. There's the gas truck," you know. So that's very nice. Generally, you got to get your plane out of the hangar, run it over to the flight line, and you might have to do a switcheroo thing with your rent car or whatnot. Now, you got to make sure you're full of smoke oil. Quick aside, I hold 6 gallons of smoke oil. I burn up every bit of it during the show. I kind of run out towards the end, depending on how I use it, and I burn about 4.5 gallons of gas in a 10-minute show. So more smoke oil than gas. Anyhow, so you look at your airplane, make sure you have all that. Then the briefing's at about 10 o'clock, and it's usually in a big tent, and there's donuts and coffee, and all the good old boy air show guys are there. It's a very small world. Everybody pretty much knows everybody, so there's a lot of backslapping and a lot of fun, usually a few practical jokes and whatnot. Whoever the air boss is will get up and talk about, you know, the air show lines, what the wind's going to be, weather, that sort of thing, frequencies, blah, blah, blah. And that's usually about 45 minutes, and then you break up, and you go back out to your plane, and generally, I'm the guy that goes from 222 to 232 or something like that. Never works out that way. They say honor the sequence, not the schedule. So you're supposed to be in your plane 2 acts prior, and I'm an air start, which means I start off with a 6-turn inverted flat spin. So obviously I can't start off from the ground. So I take off right before the guy that's flying before me, and I go out and climb up. So generally I'll go out now and I'll start practicing, and you may have seen people do this. I'll do it like 3 ways. I do the snake dance, right? So I'll walk through my routine, you know, and I go hide so nobody thinks I'm crazy. But like I come in, the first thing I do is a 4-point vertical roll up to the flat spin. So I'll walk through it like this, up. I'm thinking about the reference points. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, push. And then I spin. And, you walk through the whole sequence like that with your eyes closed, maybe imagining it. Then usually I'll sit in the rent car and I'll just look out at the air show box. And I'll go through the sequence again and just visualize myself out there doing it. And then I do it again a third time like I'm in the cockpit, just calling it out. And you say things out loud, like when I do the flat spin, you call out the turns. 1, 2, just keep your head in the game. So generally, by now it's lunchtime. You'll go have lunch, and you're drinking a lot of water. You want to stay hydrated, keep your G tolerance up. If you get dehydrated, your blood gets thick, your D tolerance goes down. Right before I take off, I'll do some stretches. I'll do some push-ups. People look at me like I'm crazy. I want to get my heart rate up. I'm getting pumped up. I'm getting ready to go do this. I'll get in the plane, put on my helmet. I'll check in with the air boss, make sure everything's running on time. In the meantime, I've been watching the guys flying, watching their smoke, watching the clouds, getting an idea of what the wind's doing. Every day's different. Every show's different. You might have an on-crowd breeze. You might have an off-crowd breeze. And you definitely will not fly over the crowd and that sort of thing. They'll tell you to go home. Anyways, I'll take off and climb out behind the crowd, and I'll get up to 3,500 feet, pull the engine way back, cool it off, lean it out, keep the plugs clean, and I watch. I pick up my reference points. Whatever, you want something real prominent. I remember doing a show up in Lake City. There was a big prison off the end of the runway. That was my big reference point. Down in Titusville, there's a power plant, there's the ocean, whatever. Pick up your reference points and watch the guy flying, watch his smoke. The wind's a huge deal. Matter of fact, it's funny. I just walked outside out here and I walked past all the smokers, and I noticed that I'd made a mental note of which way the wind was blowing. What am I thinking, right? I'm not doing an air show today, but anyhow, also about an hour before, the ICAS has set up this thing called the Sacred 60. So nobody will say boo to you 60 minutes before your show. You just kind of go into your own little world. And I usually go hide in my rent car. So you just put everything else out of your mind. Flying air show aerobatics is one of those things that if anything else is on your mind other than exactly what you're doing, you're probably going to get hurt. Okay, so I'm out there and I'm watching the other guy, and this goes on for a few minutes, and then pretty soon the air boss is going to call, and he's going to say, "Paul, Eagle Air Show, are you ready?" And I'll say, "Yeah," and he'll go, "Airspace is yours. You're cleared into the box." It's always a little different. I did a show up in, North Carolina somewhere, and this good old boy was the air boss, and he said, "Eagle Air Show, are you ready?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Have you ever heard, let the big dog eat?" I thought, "What? Yeah, I've heard that." And he said, "Well, you're the big dog. Come on in and get yourself something to eat, buddy. Air box is yours." Okay, so here I come. So now this is just really, really, really aggressive flying, guys. If you don't want to fly an airplane to its absolute limits and then beyond and know everything that it's doing, be comfortable with every attitude it's gotten out of everything it could possibly get yourself into, you don't want to be doing this. You definitely don't want to be doing something down low that you've never done before. So I'm all jacked up about this point, and I'm at 3,500 feet. Everything's going to come all the way forward. Throttle, prop, mixture, smoke. I got a smoke switch on top of my stick there. I mean, I've had nightmares about pulling the stick out of the floor. I'm hitting that thing so hard, and you see these videos of guys, it looks like they're just banging it around, and we are, but we're doing it just right. It takes a lot of practice. It's not just slamming the stick around. Anyways, I'll come diving in, usually from behind the crowd, but again, every venue's different. Usually from behind the crowd, smoke on, dive down to red line, and I figured out a point where I'm going to start my pull based on the winds. And so I'll go through my sequence now. I'm all jacked up, I'm screaming, I'm yelling, diving in, and you put that first 5 G's on the plane to pull up for that 4-point vertical, and the G's just feel so good. You're all jacked up. I've got goosebumps right now just telling you guys about this. This is, I've never had heroin, but I think it's pretty close, This is a drug. You're going to be on a high for about 10 days after this, trust me. Put about 5 G's on the airplane, and the G's just feel so good. It's like your airplane's giving you a big warm bear hug and saying, "Let's do this, baby." So here we go. Boom, straight up to vertical, right? Check your wingtips out, and then the 4-point, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. The airplane's decelerating very rapidly because you're going straight up, and you want the roll to be axial, right? Not barreled around like this. So that's one of the hard points there. As an aside, anytime you do a point roll, just for make it look pretty, the amount of time that you stop and hesitate, or hesitation roll, should be about the same amount of time that it took you to roll from here to here. So it has a rhythm to it, a flow, so to speak. Anyways, I do the 4-point roll straight up, and then I do a push Humpty. A Humpty bump is you take the airplane up a vertical line, and you either do a push or a pull Humpty, right about a little bit before it stops. You want a little radius over the top, one way or the other, and then down. Now, the interesting thing here is in airshow aerobatics, you're bringing this airplane out, everything you can possibly get out of it. So you not only use primary flight controls, which would be your ailerons, elevator, rudder, throttle, but you're also using secondary controls, which when I say that, I'm talking about basically gyroscopics. The propeller, how many people here have spun a gyroscope and held it in their hand? Yeah, and then it probably fell out of your hand when you tried to move, didn't it? It's stability in space. So I've got a real light propeller, so the gyroscopics have been lessened, but it's still, you're flying this giant disc. Matter of fact, Steve Wolf, famous airshow guy, he got to fly a Spitfire about, 6-8 months ago. And I said, what was it like? And he said, it was like flying a giant disc. It's got this giant metal propeller out front, and the gyroscopics are a huge consideration, much more than they are in a Pitts or an Eagle. Anyhow, I do a push Humpty into my inverted flat spin. And the funny thing is, I'm just about stopped here, so I've got a lot of right rudder in because the airplane turns to the right in the slipstream. When I push it over, I have the right rudder to the floor, and I also have full right aileron because of the torque of the engine and the gyroscopics. So if you think about it, sitting in the airplane, the propeller turns clockwise. I'm pushing it forward, so I'm pushing on the top of the propeller. That acts to the right. It makes the airplane want to yaw to the left. Okay, yaw is like side to side, ear to ear movement. So when I do that push Humpty, the right rudder is on the floor. Sticks all the way forward and to the right. The airplane tucks over like this and it goes upside down. And as soon as it stops pitching, which is right about here, the yaw starts because the gyroscopics are gone now. You'll see that in the video here we see at the end. So I do a 6-turn inverted flat spin. Why? Because everybody thinks inverted flat spins are a big deal. I'll let you in on a little secret. They're not in an Eagle. It's not a finesse maneuver. You just hold the stick all the way over full power. So now I'm holding it like this and I accelerate it. And if I do it just right, I can get the tail to come up above the nose, and it looks really cool. The smoke pulls out to the wings. So I count 6 turns, and the reason I do 6 is because the math works out from the height I started at. I can dive down and get to the red line and then up for my next maneuver. Now, what I have the announcer telling the crowd is 6 turns is because that's about the maximum before the Eagle won't come out, which is, it's not true at all. It'll flat spin all day long, but hey, we're selling it here, right? And if I got a good announcer, I'll have the whole crowd count out, 1, 2, keep him honest, folks. Don't let him cheat. Get away with 5, right? So I do the 6 turns. This is the most demanding part of my show right here, physically. I've been hanging in the straps. It's only -1 G, but I've been doing it for about 20, 30 seconds or so. So what happens when you do negative Gs is the blood pressure goes up in your head. So your body says, hey, too much blood pressure, right? Slow down your heart rate. So I'm hanging in the straps, and my body has gotten acclimated to this new -1 G thing. Well, guess what? Now I'm going to hit the down line and go to +5. It's really hard. You go from that negative to positive, and the blood just wants to drain. So as soon as I hit the down line, I start just screaming and squeezing my legs, doing anything I possibly can, and I start the pull. And I usually pretty much gray out here. I kind of wish my wife wasn't here listening to this, but this is just something you can control real easy and you get used to it. It sounds crazy, but I'll be coming right about here. The G is worst right about here because this is where you have what we call God's G, right? You're actually perpendicular to the earth. So I'm pulling, and my world has gone from this to about this now, and also the color's starting to go out. It's starting to go to black and white. And you can just modulate the G with that. I mean, if I let off right then, boom, it's right back. Everything's back in color, and I'm right back there. But you got to keep pulling. So if you ever see any of my shows, maybe I'll come down and right about here, I kind of slack off the pull. Yeah, I need the picture to come back there. Anyways, I hit it back up to the vertical, and now we're going to do the torque roll. So we were talking earlier about the torque of the engine makes the airplane go to the left. What I'll do is I'll establish the upline, and then you get the airplane rolling left, full left aileron. It rolls, and I'll turn the smoke off right before I stop so you can still see it. The airplane will stop in midair, so now you don't have any wind or air going over the flight controls. But the airplane will keep rolling left from the torque of the engine. I got a piece of yarn out there on my eye strut at the end of the wings. So I'm watching it like this. As soon as that yarn goes backwards, I reverse the ailerons. Now I'm flying the airplane backwards. And let me tell you, it takes a little getting used to. It's weird looking straight up like this. I'm generally about 1,800, 2,000 feet high at this point. The airplane's shaking like crazy. It doesn't like it. It's bucking and carrying on, and there's probably some smoke coming in the cockpit and whatnot. The yarn goes backwards, and I'm trying to get as many of these turns as I can going backwards out of it. So you're trying to keep it from falling over. You know, the heavy end's up here now. So you fly it backwards as long as you can. Usually in my Eagle, I can get 2.5 turns. Now there's, you know, the new airplanes, they can just sit there and twirl under the propeller, but the Eagle won't quite do that. But I'll get 2.5 turns, hit the smoke again, back down, hit the down line. All of this is just energy management. It's just a big yo-yo, okay? This is airplane talk. So if I'm up high, I'm generally kind of slow and out of smash, right? But I got that energy, that kinetic energy of altitude. If I'm down low, I'm going fast. So if I have a problem, I've got a little energy, I can do something with it. So it's just a big yo-yo. So now I hit the down line. On the down line, it's important. This is finesse. You don't want any angle of attack, AOA, alpha, whatever you want to call it, on the down line. You'll lose energy then. So you want absolute zero going down. If you do it right and a long down line, you can have as much as an extra 10 miles an hour at the bottom, which is money in the bank. So I hit the down line, back up, and I'm coming up to do a double hammerhead now. The double hammer is another secondary control maneuver. So let's say the crowd line's here. Up I go, and I'll do a 90-degree, put my belly to the crowd like this. It shows best that way. So the way you do a double hammerhead, you're going to use the gyroscopics of the propeller again. Instead of going up vertical 90, you have your belly to the crowd. You go about 80, 85 degrees. And normally where you would kick left rudder for a hammerhead, you, about 2 or 3 seconds earlier, you kick left rudder and let it come around. As the airplane comes through about right here, you go full forward stick and hold the rudder in. So what does that do, that forward stick? It makes the airplane tuck under like this, which produces a left yaw. And that's what gets you through a double hammer. And it's amazing when you push that stick forward, you just feel the airplane yaw and around it goes. It's not perfect. The ones on the video here are terrible. I'm like, oh, that was my worst double hammer ever. But anyway, the double hammerhead is a secondary flight control maneuver as well. Gyroscopics are definitely a big part of that. Okay, let's see. Dive back down to airshow center. I'm starting to run out of smash now. I'm getting lower and lower. Again, it's just a big yo-yo. So I pull down right in front of the crowd, up, 1, 2, 3, bang. Usually get 2 or 3 snap rolls out of it. So you hit the up line, you come back to the airplane, start shaking, full rudder. As soon as it breaks, the stick comes forward. You accelerate it. I can usually get 2, 2.5 snap rolls out of it. When it stops, I want to kind of hang it there and it looks cool, smoke's all pouring out, and then you just dump the nose over. Down to the end of the airshow line and a Humpty Bump turnaround. On the turnarounds, you want to do energy neutral stuff. So in other words, you don't want to lose energy. You'd like to gain. In an Eagle like mine, you're lucky if it's just a neutral maneuver. So something like a hammer or a Humpty Bump is pretty neutral. If you do a wing over, it's kind of a winner. It's you're going to come out of it with a little bit more smash than you brought into it, right? But this whole thing is just energy management. So anyways, I'll go to the end of the runway and I'll do probably a push or pull Humpty. So up, maybe a half roll going up, and then you can push or pull whatever you haven't done just to kind of keep it visually interesting. Back down to airshow center. I'm looking for at least 180 now. If I don't have that, I don't really have the smash to do this next maneuver. So if you got a good announcer, you know, I'll wave off and I'll go out and climb a little bit. And the announcer will say, I saw a flock of birds or something. And anyways, I'll come back in a few minutes. Now we come out and do the inside out 8. So everybody knows what a Cuban 8 is. It's basically a figure 8 laying on its side. I do mine a little different. You come into it, you do 5/8 of a loop. So you come up like this, and when you hit the 45 down line, generally, you roll back to upright and do it again, and it looks like a big 8. Well, that's for sissies. So I do the 5/8 of a loop. I'm upside down. You're slow at the top of the maneuver and fast at the bottom. You want the roll to be right in the middle. So you count 1 potato, 2 potato, 3, and I do a full roll to where I'm back inverted, just like I started. Then you count 1 potato, 2 potato, and push. This is when your head gets real big. -4, right? Push on around, a lot of right rudder, up, 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 over the top. 45 down again, 1 potato, 2 potato, 3, roll, another 2, and pull. And that's pretty much an energy neutral maneuver. You should come out of that doing about 182, and I'll bottom out of that about 300 feet or so. I've got the seat belt is, you have to have a 7-point harness to do acro competition or whatever. So you got the 5-point, left and right, shoulder strap. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 crotch strap. Then that comes over, and it's a ratchet, just like you see guys tie down stuff on their trailer with, and you crank that thing as tight as you can get it. Then on top of that, the other 2 points are just like a regular car seat belt. Goes over the top and makes sure that first one doesn't get unfastened or come loose or whatever. And they have to go to different attach points too. So you got to have confidence too. You can't do this stuff unless you just have total confidence. Okay, finish the Cuban 8. Now I'm going to go out and do a quick wing over. Depending on the venue and whatnot, you can't direct aerobatic energy at the crowd. So generally I'll pitch up like this, go away from the crowd, 90 degrees of bank, and right here, why not? Snap roll, knife edge to knife edge. Wham! It makes a cute little twirly in the sky and back around. All of these can be wind correctors or whatever, and that's a skill you learned from back in your competition days, right? So now I'm kind of running out of energy. I'm not going to do anything vertical now. So I'm going to come down the runway. I'm going to get about, depending on the conditions, anywhere from 50 to 150 feet high. If it's a real windy, gusty day, I have to get it up a little higher. But I'm just going to bang the stick all the way over and show the Eagle's maximum roll rate. So it's basically just down the runway. When you get down low altitude aerobatics are a completely different world than doing it up at altitude. You've got no horizon. You got to be very careful where you look. Your mind is looking for zero relative motion, basically. Anyway, I just look at the far end of the runway, bang the stick all the way over, and you just roll. And you sit there and push as you're inverted like this. And usually I can get 4 rolls. Go to the end of the runway, and now this is my contrast. I'll do a quick up and a hammer and come back, and now I do a super slow roll. So I use the whole length of the runway to do 1 roll, and I'm rolling super slow. And the goal here is to be halfway done at midfield, right? Which would be wings level inverted. So that's what I'm kind of judging it on. I'm rolling super slow, and it's just a swagger maneuver. I mean, it's just like, look, I can fly this airplane no matter what, you know. So you kind of knife edge and inverted and all the way down the end of the runway. Now I'm out of energy, guys. I'm out of energy and ideas. So this is kind of a fun part of the show. I switch over and I talk to the air boss then over the speakers. Generally, I've met some little kid earlier in the show who showed an interest and was a nice kid, and I wrote his name on my hand, okay? So I'll talk to the announcer, I'll roll upside down just to keep it interesting, and I'll say, wow, welcome to the air show, give me a wave, and I wag my wings inverted, and everybody wave at me, and I say, I see that little boy in the blue t-shirt, hey, give me a wave, you know, and I say hi to little Johnny or whoever it was. Inevitably, after the show, some kid in a blue t-shirt comes up and says, you could really see me? Yeah, oh yeah, you know. And if I wrote down little Johnny's name or something, they are absolutely thrilled. So that's one of the nicer things of doing air shows that you can do. Anyways, I'll get a little smash back, come back in. Now I'm up to about 2,500 feet again, hand it back to the air boss. Diving in, looking for 180 or so, 60-degree pitch up for the lam shavak, the tumble, which is, don't tell anybody this, it's really pretty easy and it's a smooth maneuver. 60 degrees up, I'll roll 1.5 just to get some momentum going. And then basically all it is just an outside snap roll. So I got the stick all the way left. When the left wing comes down to the ground, I push full right rudder and the stick goes in the left corner. And it does like half an outside snap. And then if you're lucky, once it breaks, you center the stick and it'll kind of go end over end. You'll see one on the video here. That one never comes out really the same way twice. So again, you really need to know what you're doing and how to get out of things. Generally, once it comes out, you kind of take stock of things, look for some of your reference points. Generally, you're right over a runway, but some places are confusing. You know, you'll be over an X or something like this. Get your bearings, hit the down line, and into the next maneuver here, which is the square loop. I thought this one was visually interesting. So I come down, I need a $180 for starting this one, 180 knots. 5G pull, vertical, hold it, hold it, hold it, pull. Now you're laid out, going into the wind. You have to figure out which way you're going to run the show too, because into the wind and downwind are kind of, the way they present is 2 different things. I do a 4-point roll, so by the time I lay out inverted, the plane's usually not even flying. It's doing 30, 40, maybe 50 miles an hour. It matters not. I'm just going to wrestle this thing through it. So I'll hold the line for just a second. It's shaking and carrying on. You got it on the ragged edge. Then you roll knife edge, and I just got the rudder on the floor. The rudder's stalled. The airplane's just going like this, but it looks cool, right? And it's slowly starting to accelerate. Back to wings level, knife edge the other way, inverted, and then down. And it gets your smash back from that, back down and out of the square loop. Let's see. Now we're going to do an outside hammer. So I'm right in front of the crowd. I'm going to roll inverted and push up into a hammer. Hammer like this, back straight down to the ground and push out like this. And I come right in front of the crowd and I do an outside loop. When I first started doing this, I'd do what's called an avalanche, which is an inside loop with 2 snaps on the top, and everybody was yawning at that, so I switched it to an outside loop, and all of a sudden I'm a hero. So once you've done a few, the outside loop is just like an inside loop. It's no big deal. So do the outside loop. I started from 300 feet. Over the top is kind of the hardest part. I got to have at least 1,000 feet over the top, usually 1,100, and then you're doing about 40 or 50, and it's like, here we go. push, back around like that, and finish out at 300 feet. That one's pretty interesting, but you get used to it. For a while there, if I had the smash, I was doing a inside snap on the top, and my brain just couldn't digest that, so I stopped doing it. It was just too weird for whatever reason. I thought I was going to get used to it, but anyway, outside loop. Then I do a turnaround. Depending on the winds and the situation, I'll either do an inverted turn, which is just out and push, or a rolling turn, which again is just fun. It's a turn while you're rolling, you know, so you do one roll for every 90 degrees a turn. Now I come back down, and again, I'm down the bottom of the box, and I'm kind of running out of smash, so now we're just going to do some more rolls. So I come by and I do a 4-point roll. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I come up, do a half Cuban 8, and instead of rolling, I don't roll. I just come down, and now I'm inverted, coming back down the runway. Now I do an 8-point roll, inverted to inverted, so, you know, the hard way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way down the runway. And now I'm going down the end of the runway inverted, and I'd push out for an outside half loop back around. And that's a neutral energy maneuver again, too. After that, it's down the airshow line for a knife edge pass. The Eagle will hold knife edge just about the length of a runway. So it's not a problem. You just come down, and generally I'll do it about 100 feet. You want to make it high enough to where the guys in the back can see. And you don't want to just do 90 degrees. You probably want to do about 100 degrees over like this, so the airplane is perpendicular to everybody, right? Instead of being off this way or that. Makes for better photos. Let's see, knife edge pass, back around, and I do my high alpha pass now. Angle of attack, you know, pilot shorthand is alpha. I can't do this till the end of the show. I take the bare minimum of gas. I normally land with about 1.5 gallons. I have to have the CG move aft far enough to do this. So come down, pitch it up 60 degrees at about 400 feet, cut the power. It'll sail up to about 800 feet or so. It takes me about 400 feet to recover from this if the engine quits. So as Patty said, double that. So I go up to 900 feet. The airplane gets in this weird regime. I've got it about 60 degrees nose up. It'll only do this if you're almost out of gas and I'm almost out of smoke oil. Stick comes all the way back, plane starts shaking. You come in with full power, and if I've got a little bit of a headwind, maybe 10 miles an hour, the airplane will just stop in midair. And I've got the stick all the way back and to the right. I've got the right rudder pedal all the way to the floor, and the plane's shaking and bucking. It doesn't like this at all, but it looks really cool. It's hanging up like this, and smoke's pouring out of it, and I'm not going anywhere. So I'll sit there and hold that and just watch the oil temperature go up like this as I do it. Hey, it's all for the show, right? I usually do that for about 5 or 10 seconds. Then you dump it over, and the plane's just got nothing. It just falls out of the sky. Back around, and oil temperature's pretty high now. If I've still got time, I'll do a roll in circle, which is, again, just a total swagger maneuver. You either roll right and turn left or roll left and turn right, depending on the winds and the air show setup there. So that's fun. You just do a one full roll every 90 degrees going around like that. I just always thought that was just the coolest maneuver ever. Do a photo pass after that, kind of cooling off the engine, and then land. Generally, Orville Eagle is waiting for me, my mascot. I got on a Chinese website and bought a eagle costume, put my kids in it, or anybody I could talk to. Orville and I will come out. The kids love Orville. I'll get out of the plane, pull up in front of the crowd. We have a big hug, and then, unfortunately, Orville's usually more popular than I am, so be it. We'll go and hand out hero cards, which I have a few of if anyone wants after the speech here, and we'll walk the crowd line and all, which is really what it's all about. Anyways, Orville Eagle's been great, and I don't think there's anybody else out there. I think I'm the only air show guy with a mascot. And when you're Eagle Air Show, having an eagle is just a natural, right? So Orville Eagle's been fantastic. I guess I'm out of time now. I was going to tell you about sponsors and whatnot, but I get talking about acro, and I get pretty fired up. When I go to the gym, I'm on the elliptical, and I just start going through my sequence. It's just because you're bored to tears in the gym, right? And I'll find myself 5 minutes later, I'm out of breath, I'm panting, I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? Oh God, I gotta stop thinking about aerobatics, you know. Anyhows, thanks for coming to my speech. I hope you enjoyed it. A little look into air shows, and I'll be in the back here. I got some hero cards if you'd like. Thank you. Oh, and we got a video. Sponsors. Titus film. It's a torque roll. think I turn off the smoke here. You can see my shadow out there. If you look. Let me back it up there. See the shadow? Backing up, and then whoa, swap the ends and back into the smoke. Snap roll. That's the inverted flat spin. Oh, I'm off center there. Kind of a slow double hammer. I think this is the torque roll. Yeah, smoke's off. We're going to back it up here. You get a pretty good one here. Back on. It doesn't like going backwards, let me tell you. The controls are trying to swap ends on you. There's a little knife edge with a snap roll in it. There's some rolls down low. 4 points. Lousy double hammer. That's my fast roll going down the runway. Hammer. That's why I'm waving to the crowd. Saying hi to the little boy in the blue shirt. Yeah, that was fun. Outside twist there. My 8-point inverted converted, I guess. And push. Boy, that's a good looking airplane. Knife edge. All right. Thank you.